Hi, everyone, and welcome. I'm Anna, and I will be your host today. Together with my two guests, we will talk about what actually works in developer marketing. We will cover where developers hang out to find new tools, what content works for them, and how to use developer focused formats to achieve goals. So basically, the range is going to be from brand awareness to product adoption and return on investment. I am joined by two amazing colleagues today with different backgrounds and a lot of experience. So I really think that we will cover a lot and we will learn a lot. But I also want to encourage you to use the comment section, the chat section, and to post your thoughts and your questions. I will make sure that I answer those on the way. Can we bring Chris and Benji to the stage? Hello.
Hi there.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Good. We're just iced in. We're both in Berlin, and you can't go outside without slipping. So it feels like being a penguin the whole time.
Actually, I'm gonna have to piss you off, Chris. I'm not in Berlin right now. I'm on the island of Crete, and it's quite a bit warmer here.
Fair enough.
But I'll come back on Sunday, so I'll witness the ice as well.
Good, but lovely to have you both, and thank you for making space for this webinar. Chris has played a key role in building developer communities at Yahoo, Mozilla, Microsoft, and currently he's doing the same thing at WeAreDevelopers. He's been helping teams communicate with developers long before DevRel was a buzzword, and he has also written a book on the topic. While Benji, he is head of global alliances at WeAreDevelopers, but with previous experiences at AWS, Atlassian, Accenture. Benji is here with us today because he has deep passion, but also experience in turning complex technology into products developers actually want to use. Good. But to give a little bit of more context to our audience, maybe you do a little intro, and I'll start with you, Chris. You've shaped developer engagement at major tech companies. How did you get started in developer advocacy?
It was basically a way out for me. I was a lead engineer, and then I was an architect, and then I couldn't get promoted anymore because there was no role other than that. And they asked me to become a people manager, which I didn't want to do. So I had to find a way to actually stay technical, but at the same time do something with people. And that's how the whole developer evangelism, as we called it back then, and now developer advocacy came along. So the good thing about Yahoo back then was that our back end was editable. So anybody can change their own settings. So I just changed my job title to developer evangelist. And then people started asking me what it was. And then I wrote a handbook about it in 2 afternoons to explain what it was and the pitch deck for my manager. And then I got the role. And that's basically how that happened. So it was the idea of bringing a technical person that is a translator for the outside world and the inside communication. So that's how I sold the whole idea of developer advocacy to the company itself. And that was at Yahoo. And then I took it with me to Mozilla after that. And then at Microsoft, there was already a product like that in place, but they realized they can rejuvenate and change it a bit as well. And then, I got into product management and did the developer tools for the Edge browser. And in that time, the whole thing blew apart. Like there's developer relations conferences, there's developer relations podcasts. Everybody and their mother and their cat has a podcast about it. And it was bizarre going to conferences and meeting only DevRel people rather than like technical people or speakers from companies. So it kind of like blossomed into its own thing. And now that a lot of DevRel people got laid off again, it's actually becoming more of a healthy space again. So it's an interesting world to be in, but I think it's something that companies should understand, that you promote somebody into a role of DevRel, somebody who knows the product, somebody who's dedicated about the work, somebody who has a connection with your company. You don't hire them from the outside. So that was a big thing in between, where people had like, let's get a DevRel person in so they make people happy and make them excited about our product. That's marketing. That's not DevRel. There's a difference between the two.
I like this advice. We already started with something practical. Thank you for the intro, Chris. And Benji, you've worked across cloud, machine learning, AI, different product ecosystems. What motivated you to focus on developer-centered partnerships, and also what led you to WeAreDevelopers?
So the way I came to that and to become passionate about community development and involvement, and to do that was actually two things. The latter was that I joined a company called Atlassian. Atlassian makes products and platforms like Jira and Confluence, and lately their AI offering as well, Rovo, for example. And that is a platform that is mostly used by software developers and engineers and architects. It enables very scaled teamwork, where you have thousands and thousands of developers collaborating together without sinking into chaos. So the very focus of that company was to make the developers happy. So I came really, really close to the developers, learned what they want, what they need, what we can do to best serve them in terms of a platform and a product using the most modern technology, but also when it comes to, for example, engaging with them more deeply, and not only through the product, but at events, for example, and in communities and so on and so forth. The former reason was actually I was once the sales and marketing lead for EMEA for a company that was involved in producing high-performance computer hardware, which was very popular with gamers. So actually my first kind of touch point with a really, really wonderful and passionate community was with the gaming community. And I was deeply engaged there. I became really, really passionate about them. And I see the same level of friendly competition, passion for the subject matter within the developer community. So joining Atlassian actually reminded me of that passion that went around. Now, joining WeAreDevelopers, that's just the next step, really. It's the next logical step, getting closer to the developer community, hoping to serve them as best as I can.
Good, thank you, Benji.
There's a drilling sound. Is that from you, Anna, or what's going on there? It feels like one of you is at a dentist office, or...
No, it's not from me, although we can expect something coming from the office. No, Rudy's not drilling at the moment. I don't know what's going on. I hope that it's not disturbing for the audience. Okay, so the topic today, we will talk about how developers discover tools, what content they trust, but also which channels support goals such as brand awareness, community, and product adoption. And I hope that some of the key takeaways participants are going to leave this webinar with are where to reach the right developers, how to communicate without sounding generic or overly promotional, but also which formats and touch points support goals from brand visibility to some measurable ROI. I will start with you, Chris, because you're with a developer background, you're coming from a developer background. So when you're looking for a new tool or a new technology, which sources or channels do you rely on most?
There's a few. There's newsletters, a lot of stuff that I get. I have a lot of feeds that I follow over the years. So instead of just going to things like Hacker News or Product Hunt or something like that, I actually go through people. I go through people that I trust. I go through people that actually show me how their companies are using the product. And I normally get, there's so many products being released right now. It's kind of tricky to always get people to get excited. And of course, if you're in a position like mine, when you're a VP of developer relations, you get about 50 emails a day of different products that you should use that would make you so much more effective than what you do right now. And you always wonder, okay, what do I do about this? When do I find time to play with that? When do I find time to actually get a look at that? So a lot of it is like word of mouth, and a lot of it is like trust in other resources. Like I have a few newsletters that I subscribe to, and we publish our own newsletter as well, and I do the same thing there. Everything that goes in there as a product is basically something that I tried out, something that I played with, and something that I realized is actually making sense. And I think it's incredibly important to give yourself some time to actually go past the initial hype. That's super frustrating for people that build products, because they want people immediately on the first day to get like, here's our product hunt release, and like hopefully everybody likes it and subscribes and everything. But then you realize after a few days it's not as hot as you actually think it is, or it doesn't really align with what I want to do. And I mean, a great example is one of the products right now that I had like for two of the newsletters. I'm like, yeah, I should be talking about this because there's so many blog posts about it and everything. And now it turns out to be a crypto scam. Like basically, I'm actually very happy I didn't advertise it and I didn't look at it, because I didn't have the time to look into the product and what it does under the hood. So the idea of like finding things in production and using things to make your own life easier, and then starting to promote them to the outside world, that's something that I find always the main thing. Like, so if you are a product creator and you want people to use your stuff, of course, reach out to people that are influencers, but also reach out to people that just have the product issue, that need your product. So that's classic user research. And in this case, if the user that actually is happy about the product that you sent them and you got them introduced to, if they turn out to be somebody who has like a massive following on social media, all the better. But just getting like the sales influencer types, like getting them to actually promote your thing, is more off-putting to me as an engineer, as actually just something that I wouldn't know about. Part of me finding tools is the excitement of finding a tool that nobody knows about as well, or a company is timid enough to come up to me and say like, hey, want to try it out? And not like, oh, 60 million people have it used as well, and everybody is a billionaire that used our product right now. Nobody believes in that story any longer. And everybody wants to optimize these things. What I find really almost affronting often is that when you get products offered to you that say like, you could automate your job, and instead of just doing your job, you're like, this product can replace you, so you should be using it. And you're like, actually, no, this is not exactly what I'm looking for. Like, there's a lot of AI stuff right now. Like, I could talk and basically send a recording of my last podcast and get generated podcasts that sound like I'm speaking them, and an avatar that looks like me doing them as well. And to me, that's just flooding the web with like material rather than just making material. So I think the word of mouth thing and the track record that somebody has that shows me a product is, to me, one of the main reasons why I would start to choose one. And also, don't just basically come up with numbers, but just basically show use cases. Like when I reached out to people with products that I built, I went to companies and said like, hey, use it, and then tell me what the wins were. Like, make it measurable, show how it tied in with their OKRs, how it tied in with their KPIs, show how the product made that company better, how much they released it. So these success stories to me are much more important than the product itself, because I will look at the product and judge it with my own standards as well. But what it did to people is actually a better selling point than having the product itself. I mean, I had this conversation with every company I worked with when they said like, okay, you work for Microsoft and you're talking about Google products on your blog. Why are you doing that? And I'm like, because the product is pretty cool. And actually, it may actually shame them into having to look at our product as well. You know, you always have to be independent as a person, as a technical person that other people listen to or read. So it's a very important thing to stay independent of that way. So this is where I find my things.
Yeah, in order to be trusted. Interesting. What I'm hearing is that developers may not be actively searching for tools every day, but they are constantly learning. And when your product appears in the places where they actually learn, the chances of adoption increases significantly.
Yeah, answer the rhythm, the what is in it for me. That's always the most important thing. Like, it's great that you have a product, but why should I use it? What benefit do I get from it?
Okay. One more question that is related, Chris. When you discover a new tool, what helps you decide whether it's worth your time? Like, what matters the most?
that I can play with it, that I can access it. I need a free tier. I need a 30-day trial period. I need to have access to the full functionality. The whole bait and switch of like, oh, here's a great product, but you have to pay before you actually see what it does. I'm not doing that. That's over. Like we had open source for like 30 years now, and there is ways to actually make things available to people without actually charging for it immediately. That's a big discussion right now in the world of AI, where a lot of companies are like, okay, let's charge first. And also, like if a product is free, then I feel like I'm the product. So don't ask me to sign in with all my information and give you my contact details from my 30 years of using Gmail. That's not something that I will do either. So these kind of like make it as possible for me to play with the thing, to try it out. You can measure that. You can give me like a key and you can see what I'm doing with your product, but don't just basically let me pay up front and then be disappointed.
You will pay with your feedback.
Yeah, on monetization, OpenAI, they actually will start placing ads into their responses. So yeah, monetization is really often front-loaded with the experience that you have with new tools, and that doesn't necessarily help.
That feels really disappointing, doesn't it? Like, I mean, that after 20 years of failing with advertising, we think putting ads inside the thing is the main thing to make money. Feels really bizarre. And I mean, it got even worse when they said, like, we're going to allow adult content now and chat with a bot in a romantic fashion. And I'm like, okay, that's just trying to cater to the biggest market out there right now that you shouldn't be playing in.
It's, to me, yeah, I mean, without getting off the main track, but it's kind of like advertising is kind of like the last resort if you can't get people to pay for the value that you deliver, frankly. So apparently not enough people find the offering, and I'm not only talking about OpenAI, about many others, but they're offering, you know, valuable enough to pay for it. So I'm going to have to place advertising, but that's taking us in a different direction.
No, but there's a good point in that. Like, one thing I will not actually trust anymore is when you say, like, this is free and it will always be free. No. If it's source available and I can download it and build it myself on my machine, okay, then I believe you. But saying like, we will never charge, it's basically, that's when your funding money, if your first seed round is out, then it's not going to be free anymore. So that's something that I don't believe anymore, that story. It's just a very important thing to realize. That, I mean, it feels weird to say that right now, but saying like we have a paid tier, to me, makes me trust the thing more than saying like we're going to be free forever.
Yeah,
there's a great.
It's an interesting point. Yeah, it's an interesting point, Chris. Yeah.
I want to get back to your question, Anna, also, and I fully support everything that Chris has said. Maybe adding to that is that you know, people often think of developers as one archetype. There's so many different people. You know, they're 15-year-old, they're 65-year-old, and 75-year-old. And some are, you know, a 65-year-old that's keeping a mainframe alive that hosts critical banking, core banking applications. Somebody else likes to play with, you know, AI and vibe code and calls themselves a software engineer, and with some license to do that. So they're very, very different people in living very, very different lives in very different cultures. I think we need to look at that as well.
Which opens a lot of opportunities for the marketing people and for the companies.
Opens a huge amount of opportunities. I mean, I'm just thinking about India, where, you know, 500 euros a month makes a huge difference and can lift an entire family out of hardship. So saying that, oh, you know, salary is not the most important thing. Well, yeah, you know, it's you can say that out of a position of comfort and privilege, but that's not everybody's reality, right? That's not everybody's truth. Another thing I want to say is that you can catch developers at very, very different moments. You know, there are times when they have to be extremely, extremely productive, and they can't be distracted, and they shouldn't be distracted by these new tools. There are times when they are a little bit cynical as well. I mean, a lot of developers that work for large organizations, large corporations, they are more or less forced to use the tools that their CTO, their VP of engineering forces them to use. Along comes somebody and say, hey, I have this new little doodah, why don't you try it? When somebody has to be super productive with tools that are maybe dated, certainly they didn't have a word in deciding whether they are supposed to use it or not. So it can be very wrong moments to engage with them. And there are very right moments to engage with them as well. And, you know, one example is a big conference like the WeAreDevelopers World Congress, where developers take their time. They cut 2 days out of their schedule to be fully focused, or 3, to be fully focused on learning, on joining masterclasses, on joining workshops, on having deep tech presentations. So you could almost say the developers joining those conferences, our conference, are very, very different people, because they don't come cynical, they don't come under pressure, they come curious, they come playful, they come sociable, and that is a perfect moment to engage with them.
I love the developer perspective that you bring, Benji, and Chris, I'll come to you again. I just wanted to make sure that we touch a little bit based on what companies are looking for when they come to events, or what companies are looking for when they want to engage with developers. And Benji, you have a lot of enterprise experience. Maybe you can kind of give us some, share your thoughts on this.
So what kind of companies they are looking to engage with? Is that the question?
What are the company goals when they are looking for engaging with? What are they trying to achieve?
Okay. So in the best of cases, I believe that they should be extremely authentic. They should talk about the strengths and weaknesses of their product. They should be fully aware of what a life of a developer looks like, meaning what are the trends, what are the pressures, what are the accelerators, what are the things that can make a developer's life easy, what are the things that can help a developer learn, improve, advance themselves, both in terms of skill set and career. Those are just really, really important topics for developers. And if you address those in an authentic way, not saying, I have the silver bullet for everything, I think that is usually very, very successful. Showing successes is also really, really important. So if you bring a developer on stage and they talk about a product, it's much more credible, much more authentic, much more believable than if a marketing person or an advertising person goes on stage and talks about the same product, which belongs to the company that employs him. So I think the developers have a super keen sense for authenticity and for what is real. And I highly respect them for that. And I think we can only be better business people or community people if we keep this in mind. That's one answer.
There's a question. Yeah, there is a question in the chat that is a little bit related to what you're talking about. If I'm a startup and I don't have the budgets that Google or NVIDIA are having, how can I position my brand or my product at the big tech conference best?
Okay. I have a response to that, but Chris, I don't know if you want to go first.
I think the interesting bit is like, and what you said is very important. If somebody else sells your success through their success, that's actually going down much better with any developer out there. That's why, for example, people like GitHub and Microsoft, when we had them at our event, they had their booths, but they had a lot of partner booths as well, where they showed little startups using their product, and also startups that they funded and supported. And that way showing like, here's how you can, even with one good idea, become successful with us, rather than just like buying our things and becoming successful through that. I think that's a very important part there. The other part, of course, is to take part as a speaker or as a presenter, and or even as a moderator, to actually just be present at that event. If you can't afford a booth, fine, but you can bring your knowledge in, and that's actually a much better way of getting things sorted, because that way you have a foot in the door, talking to the other speakers, talking to the other moderators, and to all the people that are actually in the with big sponsored booths, and you have a way to get in there as well. When it comes to communicating with developers at the event, I think it's very important, and we keep talking to people about this, that you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and that should be the ratio. Like, people have a lot to say that come to our event and have a lot of good questions. So bombarding them with like your offerings and saying like we're cheaper and better and faster than the others is going to be not successful. But like saying like, here's what we have, what do you think could be improved? Here's an open backtracker where you can immediately tell us what's wrong with it. Here's you can take half an hour and play with the product and find bugs, and we give you even money if you find a bug and we can fix it. That's a really important part to actually get people excited about the thing. The other thing, of course, is like, as a startup, you need a booth if you don't have a product. If you're just starting up and you want to build a community around the thing online, then it's actually making sense to be there as a presenter or be there as somebody actually helping out as a moderator or something like that, rather than having the one booth in the corner that nobody looks at. Because I mean, there's swag hunters, of course, as well. There's people that go through the booths and see like who's got the coolest stuff to take home. And of course, as a startup, you cannot afford any of that. So that's a thing that you should also wonder about as well. Make yourself
I like the honesty.
Yeah, I mean, one way to almost democratize your voice a little bit and make sure that you're heard despite a low budget. I mean, there's a couple of things that I think are just best practice. Number one, if you're going to go to an event, you're going to create a lot of content, right? And make sure you push that out in the digital realm as well, maybe even in real time. I think amplifying this, I know we developers, we are having a marketing package that's really low cost, and it really helps you kind of amplify whatever is happening in the physical world. For example, if you're having conversations, interviews, podcasts, live streams at our event. So that's really, really helpful. Another thing is, if you are a startup that is maybe a little bit later stage, meaning you have a product and maybe it's just an MVP, and you have a customer or just a company that is curious about it, bring that, demo the MVP, talk to, have your customer talk to prospective customers, people that are curious. I think that's really, really powerful. That's a small answer. I think Chris has really given the broader and bigger answer here.
Thank you, Benji. And apparently in-person events are a big deal in the whole mix, but what other channels, and this is going to probably be the question to Chris, but also Benji, feel free to jump in and compliment. What other channels would you recommend for companies that want to reach developer audiences if they don't want to come to events?
I mean, there's communication channels, there's Slack groups, there's like there's discourse groups, there's Discord groups. There's all kind of things you can be on. Newsletter posts really work as well. That's another thing that a lot of people don't underestimate. That weirdly enough, with the overconsumption that we have in information, and with everybody offering you an AI overview, newsletters had quite a renaissance in the last 2 years. People actually going through curated content rather than algorithmic news feeds that don't make any sense or just obviously slightly veiled attempts at advertising. So that's a thing where a lot of people hang out and a lot of people get their information from. And also magazines, like online magazines. We have one. There's a lot of others out there as well that actually are curated and make sense to actually read up in those things as well. And we had a few companies that worked with us and actually wrote on that tutorial. I hate that word, but they wrote a thing that basically explained what their company is doing, what their product is doing, and then had a lot of conversations. So when you do this, also have again 2 ears, 1 mouth, have an open channel where people can communicate with you. Don't expect us to get comments in and actually just send them forward. Like, make a place at the end of it, like, hey, if you've got something to say, we're here to listen to you. And then it becomes very, very successful. One of my favorite stories that we had about this was this company called PenPot, which does like a Figma in the browser. So it's a collaborative design tool. And of course, I heard that many, many times before, but I love that they took when it comes to compensation and making money, that they turned that completely on its head. What they do is they offer the whole product with every feature for free. And if you want to limit the product, if you want to actually give your users in your company only access to a bit of it, you have to pay money to block them from different functionality. Because
That's interesting.
It's a very, very cool way of monetizing your product, because only enterprise customers with a certain thing and distrust to their engineers will want to pay for that. So that's already a good way to get money in. So they were really exciting to talk to.
One little bit of experience I have that I'd like to add here is blogs. It sounds ancient, but blogs are actually really, really important. I know from working at Amazon or within AWS, which is a cloud division of Amazon, the cloud engineers and the software engineers, they all get gold on publishing blogs, which means Amazon is paying a huge amount of money for competent people to write blogs. Because, you know, if you're an employee and you reach your target, you get your bonus. So Amazon is paying a lot of money for people to pay to write blogs. So that's another thing. The question is, where should you post that blog? You know, if you're with Amazon, you have the comfort of, you know, publishing on Amazon.com. But I think Chris talked a little bit about where to push your material out. I think one thing that's really, really important is that if you, with a large corporation, you know, publish on, you know, the blog space of your large corporation. If you're an individual or with a small company, or you want to work on your own career, make sure you post somewhere where you actually own the content, you know, whether that's medium.com or something else, but make sure that you retain ownership of everything that you put out there.
That's something I've been doing since 2006. I mean, mine is a WordPress blog that hasn't changed since then. I hacked that thing to death, so I probably couldn't update it completely anymore. But I mean, I publish there, and that's my source of truth. And then I publish everywhere that I can. I put the same content on LinkedIn. I put the same content on Medium. All the paywall things that actually I can't access. But in the end, I will own it. Everything I write for WeAreDevelopers is everything I write for WeAreDevelopers is. Yeah, it's also Markdown. It's on GitHub. Another big thing, of course, is that there's great Medium. I liked when it came out with the that people can comment and highlight bits of it and comment on that highlight only, and that's a really, really nice interface touch. Another one that's really beautiful for that is dev.to, dev.to. That's actually very easy to publish articles there, all written in Markdown, and they do a really good job of promoting it for you as well. And of course, just on GitHub as well, and just having a good README, having a good issues template is a super important part there. Something like CodePen, where you can just show your code and people can fork that code and play with it and change it around interactively without having to ask you what to change. As developers, we love to fiddle with things and break them and then fix them again. So if you give me a chance to actually do that in an interactive way, like StackBlitz, all kind of other platforms that allow me to do that. Today we talked for SideChart in the live show, and they actually have that in their documentation. So all the code that you see, you can press a button and edit it live and play with it. And that's super important, because that's one less email that I have to write to ask you to play with your stuff. That's one less barrier to entry that makes a lot of sense to use.
A lot of examples, Chris, that you give that require a lot of interaction. It feels like marketing done from developers to developers.
Yeah, I mean, the humans are the thing in the loop. Like, you want the developers to actually start talking in their company about your products. DevRel is all about like getting the foot in the door through the other tech geeks out there. It's not about that I go to the CEO and impress them with something, but I impress somebody in AWS who now can work twice as fast as they can before, and go to their manager and say like, hey, should we roll out to the whole company? That makes a lot of sense. That human touch and that interaction is super important. And of course, not to kid ourselves, if you want to set up your own blog platform for your engineers, if you want to set up your own like a sandbox where people can play with your code, you will drown in security attacks and you will drown in AI slop at the moment. Yeah. So using something that already has a good filtering mechanism in front of it is probably a better use case than bring up another thing. We talked about that back in Yahoo when the social media thing started. We said like, don't build these Potemkin villages, you know, these cities that were just fronts that had nobody living in them. So when you drove through them, they looked like they were already have a lot of people there. nobody goes to a platform that's empty. So you have to precede it either, or you have to go to places where people already are. A great thing is that every conference, including ours to a degree, but a lot of smaller conferences also have Discord channels or have Slack channels. So if you actually go to a smaller event, you can join the Slack channel later on and have a conversation with the people there. Don't come in as the salesperson to basically say like, oh, by the way, we got free stuff for you, but just listen in and see what's going on in there. So there's an audience that would cost you a lot of money to buy in that you immediately get by being human and by having interacted with the people before.
So salespeople are not invited to conferences.
Well, Chris, I think Chris has mentioned something 3 times now, which is the topic of listening, and I think that's really, really important. And I think a good salesperson as well is one who listens more than they talk, right? So I think really listening, finding moments where you can listen, finding the right people that you can listen to, and also actually helping people talk about. Sometimes they're not fully eloquent to talk about what really is on their mind, what really troubles them. And front loading your conversation with Potemkin's village, like Chris said, with like a fake cardboard town, nobody's going to believe you. But if you listen, and they say, you know what, we have a partial solution for you, but it might be really interesting. That is much more credible than saying, oh, I have a whole village that does everything for you. But in the end, it's people don't feel listened to. So I love that Chris emphasizes listening over and over again. I really believe that.
And go through the event and see which of the booths impressed you. See what people have to say about others, like strike up conversations with people, like, what did you think of that NVIDIA booth? What do you think of that thing? And then you can learn for your own presence once you can afford it as well that way.
Yeah.
So that's a very, very good way of getting just a feel of like how it would work for people.
Just a simple example is, sorry, Anna, just a simple example. I've been to a bunch of the large big shows that happened lately, whether it's, CES or reInvent by AWS and so on and so forth. And just the design of a booth communicates a lot. If there is just walls, and maybe just 2 or 3 entrances, that shows that nobody's really inviting you. They're not open. Maybe they're not listening. And one, entrance might be to let a select few people in that they want to talk to, and the other entrance is probably more of an emergency exit, frankly, for those poor people. But if you have an open booth, no walls, people can access, people get welcome, people make eye contact, people listen to you. I think that just even design communicates so much in terms of what your attitude is towards developers and others.
That's beautifully said and really important, Benji. I wanted to ask you also, from a company perspective, from your previous experiences, which channels or content formats have proven most effective with when the goal is to reach and convert technical audience?
Something that is true, I think, in the technical realm and in the business realm is success stories. And success stories look different in different realms. If you're with a business, you present, this is a customer, that was a challenge, this is how we worked with it, this was the outcome. Whereas if you work with developers, you can very much say, okay, this is a team of, let's say, 5,000 developers. They had problems documenting everything they said or all of their work. It took too much time. It was not consistent. We introduced an AI bot that helped them document everything they said and everything they did. And therefore, it became more accessible for everybody to learn from each other. And then you can talk about, the time that has been saved for developers. So you communicate different returns on investment. You communicate different benefits. But if you can credibly, with a success story, which means there is a user, a customer that has been successful with your product, with your service, with your platform, I think that's really, really powerful.
Do they sell the success stories?
Yeah, honestly, it's pure currency. It's success stories, win cards, however you want to call them. These are pure currency. I encourage all of our customers to come on stage with their customers to present their partnership and how they're working together. In fact, for many years, I was a customer of WeAreDevelopers, and I went to the World Conference with Accenture, with Atlassian, with AWS. And one thing that we did is, and that's still on public and on YouTube, so I can talk about it, but when I was with Atlassian, I was talking to Vodafone, asked Vodafone to use the new AI offering of Atlassian, and then present that on stage. And that was directly focused on a developer experience. We're looking at the quality of the backlog. We were looking at time saved. And we basically ran a trial. It was very positive. And ultimately, Vodafone, together with Accenture, went on stage, on the tech leader stage at the WeAreDevelopers conference, and talked about the successes they were. And they were keen listeners. And I know there are a lot of companies that later followed up with us as Atlassian and wanted to hear more about this product. So yes, it's very powerful, but it has to be real. It cannot be conjured up. It needs to be a very real success story. But if you have those, you should really put those out there, because they're pure currency when it comes to your sales efforts.
It doesn't feel that easy to motivate a client to join with you on stage. How do you make them share success stories? How do you make them do a story with you?
I think that's a great question. I think you can, if a company wants to position themselves, for example, as innovative, as trying new things, as being forward-thinking, as being compliant to new regulation. Vodafone, when we did this with Vodafone, the EU AI Pact wasn't in force yet, but it was talked about. It was public. It was just not in force yet. Vodafone had the ambition, and they were successful in fulfilling the requirements of the EU AI Pact with this project, although they didn't even have to. So they felt they want to put themselves out there as a forward thinker, as a forerunner when it comes to that. They also want to position themselves to their customers as an innovative company that is using AI not just for another 100 pilots, but actually for generating real benefits for themselves and therefore for their customers as well. So I think getting them by speaking to their ambition and to their brand is really, really helpful. Then there's going to be other cases where customers want to stay in the back, they want to stay in the dark, they really don't want to talk about themselves. Sometimes there's really good reasons for that. For example, if it's a regulated industry or the military or the public space or anything like that. But then you can always say, listen, we have this customer. It is, it's a fintech company. They've been using this and this. This is how it works. That is still credible enough. I believe there's a question here. Hang on. How do you motivate clients to do a success story with you? That's your question.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, exactly your question.
Yeah.
Good moderation.
I want to see your perspective, Chris, on this. Do you have any experience with success stories, and how would you approach it?
A lot of it is about having the good communicators to talk to them. I mean, that's where people like good DevRel people come in. It's the same with a few customers that we had on our shows, for example, were actually very afraid of being on a show because they're like, oh, we're so niche and nobody's going to care about our stuff. And it's then about finding the real answers or finding the interesting bits in their things, putting the effort in and actually looking at their product and say okay, you're focused on this, you're focused on that, but the technology that you based this on, this is a problem that a lot of people try to solve, and you solve that problem. So let's talk about that bit. So to find the success story of the user, of the customer that actually goes on stage with you is a very important part there. And I think the AI story the AI regulation story is a good point there. Somebody like Vodafone, who's a huge provider of mobile connectivity and internet connectivity, that was very much on their radar, and they had to be on the forefront, and it gave them an opportunity to show themselves as a trusted customer, a trusted partner to the people in the audience as well, because they had no idea what that regulation thing was about as well. So the going out there and talking to the customer and analyzing what they're doing and getting the time to actually workshop with them what they want to talk about is a very important part as well. I mean, there's it becomes very, when it comes to the big players, when I work for Microsoft or I worked with Google and others, they always have partners on stage that tick all the boxes, like, oh, they do something for good, or they do something in that market that is currently growing, and that's kind of thing. And that can sometimes become tedious as well as an engineer in the audience, because you're like, yeah, okay, what happens then half a year later with that thing? I mean, remember there was this bracelet for somebody with Parkinson's that learned from their movement and helped them to do their handwriting again. And then 2 months later, nobody ever heard about that again. So it was just vaporware, slideware, as we call it. That software was never built. So that's something that you should also be very enthusiastic about, to make sure when you put something there, have a follow-up story, keep the story alive, and not just like have that one person on stage. The same way when people go on stage as a salesperson, and I'm not against sales, I'm just saying I see it so often. The salesperson is there, and to get credibility, they bring a developer with them on stage. And it feels like that they're bringing their pets to make like backflips or something. So it always cracks me up when they got these like, so Steven, do you think our product can do this? And you're like, yeah, of course Steve is going to say, no, it's a pile of shit, it's not going to be able to do it. Like, you know, there's like these obvious demos that are so scripted that of course they are successful. And I'm very happy that the cloud world is coming down a bit, because that was always the thing. Like, I could spawn 5,000 servers in 2 minutes. And you're like, well, if you need to spawn 5,000 servers, your architecture is actually shot. You have a problem, not a solution here. So that's nothing that impresses me as a developer, although it looks great on stage to actually do that kind of stuff. I think the one bit that was very successful for me was actually going to the companies and seeing what they do and helping them solve their own problems. So what I did in Microsoft is I went through GitHub and I found products that were related to ours that had issues, and I programmed things for them, or I wrote pull requests pointing security bugs for them out. And that way I got them in to talk to us to actually see if we can help them further go with that. One of the big things when you are a developer and you're getting into DevRel is, how do you make yourself measurable for your company? Yeah. And the biggest problem is conferences. Conferences are great to go to. They feel really exciting when 5,000 people in the audience clap and laugh at your jokes. And then you go back to your hotel room and you're like, okay, what was the outcome of that now? What's the measurability? How can I go to my boss and say, like, okay, we spent $3,000 sending me to America with all hotel rooms and everything. I gave my 1 hour talk. What's the benefit of it? So what I always did at conferences and before conferences as well is go and look who else is sponsoring, go who else is speaking, and then offer, when I'm, for example, in Atlanta, to go to a Coca-Cola and say, like, hey, after the conference, before I fly home, I can do a brown bag at your company and listen to your problems, what issues you have with Microsoft products. You know, get that foot in the door that way, make it measurable, make personal connections and turn them into meetings on their soil. That could be their repo, but this could also be their office if you want to go directly to the salespeople there. And those were the biggest successes that I managed to chalk off at the end. Like these companies then worked with us because they met somebody that helped them solve a problem that they had, rather than just like tell them, oh, we can deal with any problem you might have, without knowing what their problems are.
I think that's a really good point, Chris. And frankly, sometimes I think that's the only purpose of a salesperson. Let me give you a very simple example. Microsoft has salespeople selling Microsoft Office. Who needs to sell Microsoft Office? People are going to buy it anyways, right? Unless, you know, you have the sovereignty issue coming up in Europe and other countries now for good reason. But who really needs to convincing that they need the Office suite or the productivity suite from Microsoft? Everybody has it. If I don't have it, I'm not compatible. So why do I do it? And the salespeople are precisely there to listen to the customers, precisely there to learn of their worries, precisely there to give that feedback back into their company, back into their product owners, to make sure that the next iteration of Microsoft Office is just a little bit better. So I think nobody needs to sell Microsoft Office, but they need to listen to the customers. So
it is becoming deeper and deeper, this discussion, but we only have a couple of minutes left. I want to make sure that, time flies. I want to make sure there are no questions in the chat area, but if we still have time for one last question from the audience. In the meantime, Chris and Benji, anything that is important to be shared with the audience I didn't ask about, you didn't talk about because it didn't happen?
I have a reaction, but Chris, maybe you too?
Go for it.
So I think, and I mentioned this before, is one thing that to me makes any community, and especially the developer community, beautiful and makes me passionate to work for them, support them, is the passion that goes around, the curiosity that goes around, the playfulness that goes around. And I think if we, as companies, as community leaders, or community supporters, keep that in mind. I think we're going to serve them a lot better, because they're a wonderful bunch of people that are curious, that want to try new things, that are playful, and that are fiercely passionate about what they do and about their craft. I think if we play to that a little bit, and allow them to show that at conferences, for example, I think we're going to be in a much better place. Everybody will be. That's a very generic one, but I think these three parts, it's what I love about developers, and I hugely respect that, and I think we need to be mindful of that quality.
Thank you, Benji.
I think open and development goes together, and that has been for a long, long time. It's been, we're not, as you said, like nobody's going to pay for Office and nobody needs to pay for Office. The same with like development environments. I mean, open source development environments, nobody's going to pay for a browser. But now with AI browsers, they're trying it again, which reminds me of like Opera.
Where did that go? That came and went in like 5 minutes, right? I tried it by the way, and yeah.
Yeah, it was really bizarre, but one thing to remember as a startup, as a company, and especially as an old company that tries to get into the open space, is that open source is free, but it's free as in puppy. It's not free as in beer. Like you have a puppy, but it will shit in your flat. It will actually need to get walkies. It will needs to get fed. So when you're actually playing in the open source space, you actually need to actually put the effort in as well. It's about 10%. It's about 10% putting code in and 90% dealing with the community feedback and writing documentation and allowing people to use your product. Like there's so many things right now that tell you like AI can do that and you can automate the documentation and generate it from the code. No, you need a really good person that listens to the audience out there and helps them when they have problems, because that sells much more your company than the productivity of your code or the quality of your product as well. The how fast I get an answer, how good that answer is incredibly important. And don't try to play that game where you have like an AI bot that looks like a person and speaks like a person, but actually speaks like a person that is from California in 1986 because they're super excited about everything. If you're a European company, your people will be grumpy. So to make sure that your AI bot also sounds grumpy.
I like the metaphor, and I would love to finish on this note. This webinar, by the way, is being recorded, so you will get the link in the follow-up email. But if you want to engage with Chris and Benji, I'm very thankful that you are here with us today. Please feel free to contact them. I hope that someone is going to post their LinkedIn profiles in the chat. If not, you will be able to find them. Well, Benji, I think it's going to be difficult with your name, and you didn't write it. Maybe you can quickly post it. Okay. So someone is sending the LinkedIn profiles in the chat.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Thank you very, very much for joining us, the audience as well, and looking forward to next meeting.
Thank you so much. Thank you so very much.
See you soon.
I really enjoyed that. See you soon.